pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided as is required by Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, with respect to the Home News Tribune to publish the same. This announcement must be entered into the minutes of the meeting. For those attending today's meeting, please be aware that all board meetings are recorded via audio. Roll call, Maria.
Chairman Engel.
Here.
Commissioner Frankel.
Present.
Commissioner Katz.
Here.
Commissioner Moskowitz.
Present.
Okay, Linda, we're ready.
Okay. We have some provisionals here that, let me,
We have a group to be rejected first, or
yes. Early voting and election day.
Okay.
early voting and provisional election day ballots.
Yes.
Right. And do we have any group of those that have to be otherwise rejected as a group?
Not these.
Okay, so
These
we've
can be
done that.
rejected as a
We've done
group.
that already.
Yes.
Okay, so
can be
these are
rejected.
just one by one. Plus
No,
the same-
these can be rejected as a group.
Okay.
Okay, and then we have the signature does not match.
Okay, I'm happy to do whatever order you want.
Okay.
It was just a question.
So the categories that we have for early voting and election day are as follows. No ballot enclosed, incomplete cert, not registered, registered out of county on cert, voted mail-in ballot, or voted the machine.
Okay. Move we reject all of the ballots you have in those categories.
Second.
Roll call, Maria.
Chairman Engel.
Yes.
Commissioner Frankel.
Yes.
Commissioner Katz.
Yes.
Commissioner Moskowitz.
Yes. Now we have some provisionals here and a mail-in ballot. So this one is a mail-in ballot. They voted, 2 ballots are enclosed for the mail-in ballot.
Two
And
of
then-
the same.
2 of the same, right? Yes.
Are they identical?
Don't tell me who they voted for, but if they're totally identical, I'd say we count one of them. If they're not totally identical, I
Is that the
would
bottom
recommend
part?
we reject
I
them.
would think it's.
Oh, it is.
It's ripped in half.
It's ripped in half. Is it?
I don't know.
No, it's not ripped in half. There's 2.
I don't
And they're
know.
different.
They're
They're different than, okay.
They're
that's all right.
rejected.
Okay.
Yes.
We want a separate motion and we move to reject it.
Second.
Roll call.
Chairman Engel.
Yes.
Commissioner Frankel.
Yes.
Commissioner Katz.
Yes.
Commissioner Moskowitz.
Yes.
Now, these are provisional ballots that had sample ballots inside of them.
They voted the sample ballot.
Yes, but some of them are the ones at the polling location, the big sample that they have.
Wow.
So it appears that the poll worker gave it to them. It wasn't their sample ballot. There was some like that, and some was their sample ballot. So,
That's tough.
regardless, it's a sample ballot.
In each instance, we know these people are who they are and we verify that they are otherwise entitled to vote?
Yeah, because the certs are torn off.
No, okay.
Wait, so we know that,
We didn't know what was inside,
Right.
but the certs are torn off because we were going to accept them.
But we,
But they were
right.
so
validated.
all of these were given to them at the voting booth.
Not all of them.
No.
It's a mixture.
How many, Sharonda? Can you tell?
Eight.
8 altogether.
They're all sample ballots.
Correct.
Well, they're sample ballots, but they're either sample ballots that we had, each polling place has X number of sample ballots, right? And the others were people who brought in their own sample ballots. So the question is, these were places where, I guess, where there were no paper provisional ballots at the location, right? Let's just see it.
Yeah.
I think the problem though there is that, do you think those were blank sample ballots given to them at the polling place? Or do you think some people brought them from home?
I think
But
it's
even if
both,
they
but
did,
it's-
That's what she said.
even if they brought them from home, we've identified that they're legitimately entitled to vote as a voter. not necessarily the ballot. We've identified that they're legitimately entitled to vote because we've ripped off the flap, so we've identified them that way. And there were, at least through the middle of the day, in most of the part, there were no paper provisional ballots as an alternative for them to vote. So,
Here's what I did the next
I'm
ballot.
just trying to figure
No,
it
you're
out.
talking it out, as we all
Yes.
should, because again of all the unusual circumstances, this happened, period, right? Because we have, in fact, at times, have we not rejected a sample ballot?
Absolutely. There's
So,
lots of things that were
this
put
is-
into, mostly things that were put into the
Right.
vote by mail ballots, envelopes. We've done that. But I
But-
don't think we've never had a situation,
As a
I don't
provisional?
recall where we've ever had a situation where we've had people have voted a provisional ballot for one reason or another, and they weren't given a provisional ballot, and we've had something else put in the provisional ballot envelope. Does anybody, do you
We have
remember
no other
anything?
choice.
Because they
I
were
said
handed a provisional ballot.
at this point, because
Yeah.
of that explanation, we're not gonna go through and see I believe I would be comfortable accepting them.
Me
Yeah.
too.
Well,
Yeah.
they've had sample ballots in a mail-in ballot envelope before.
Right.
Yeah.
That we
That's what-
rejected
and we
because
rejected
because they clearly,
Right.
one,
No.
it was identifiable, and two, because they were given the proper ballot, and it was their mistake, not an election official's mistake. In this instance, the reason they didn't have a paper provisional ballot is because the county clerk
Right.
didn't put paper provisional ballots, didn't have it available.
Right, I don't recall ever having a sample ballot in the provisional ballot
Right,
envelope until this
right.
election.
Right.
Do you want to make a motion to accept them?
I
So,
just,
so can I just, one more thing, just
We'll talk about it.
if this, I understand this as the sample ballot, I'm just gonna ask another example. If an emergency ballot is put in just like that, are we accepting the emergency ballot like that? Because I just wanna make sure we talk about everything right now.
If the emergency ballot was put into a provisional ballot envelope,
Right,
and they were,
right,
and they were checked, and they were,
Right.
those that were legitimately entitled to vote,
right,
if they had their ballot, we've actually
Right.
counted them already,
right.
right?
You did it last time and we're doing it now. We're
I know,
doing
and I
it
just
now.
wanna make sure, yeah, but it's
We
the
should be
same-
consistent,
Right.
and we're doing this somewhat on the fly.
Correct, correct.
So we're just trying to go be logical in
Yep.
terms of what we're
As per
doing.
your instructions, we're counting them and we're
Right.
remaking them on a readable ballot, so
Yeah.
it goes to the tabulator.
Yeah,
Right.
no,
Right, okay.
I'm just
We're-
clarifying because you asked the question.
Yep.
we're trying to talk it out to see the logic, right? And under the circumstances where the voter was legitimately entitled to vote, and there was nothing else, and we were able to we've identified that they are indeed legitimately entitled to vote if they have had if this was a paper provisional ballot in there, you wouldn't be bringing it to us, it would have already been counted.
Right.
Right? But in this instance, it's not,
Correct.
because there weren't any available, and but these are people that we've identified as legitimately entitled to vote.
Right.
All right, let's
You
make a
make the
motion.
motion?
I will make a motion that we
Okay, I'll
accept
yeah.
Roll
provisional
call.
ballots as explained, as the provisional ballots that were checked, the legitimacy of the voter and the process.
And we have 8. Right, we should make a note of that. I'll second that motion.
Roll call, Marie?
Chairman Engel?
Yes.
Commissioner Franklin?
Yes.
Commissioner Katz?
Yes.
Commissioner Moskowitz?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. This one here is confidential voter, but they did not fill out the information. It's incomplete. We don't know who it belongs to. So we don't know what to do because they're a confidential voter. Are you going, will you? be
I know
holding
the
something
concept of a
up?
confidential voter, but I don't know the mechanics of how they're supposed to, how they or they're supposed to do. I
They're
know a
supposed to have
confidential voter
They're
is
supposed to fill
someone.
out their name on the certification, write the words confidential voter. They're supposed to give us their municipality, ward, and district.
Is this normally a provisional type ballot, or is it,
No, sometimes they're mail-in ballots.
it's a mail, oh, they got a mail-in
Sometimes they're mail-in
ballot?
ballots, sometimes they're provisional ballot voters.
Okay.
Regardless, we need their name, we need their town, their
Right,
ward.
so we have nothing.
Right. Okay.
We don't know if they're real or not. That's a yes.
That's Ruth.
I
Do you
agree.
need a vote, do you need a motion, or we agree?
Yes, we agree.
Okay, listed it. And that was signatures?
Yep, now we're
Okay.
going to signatures.
Fire away.
Happened to the barcode, so I'm gonna put it in, okay, Glenn? Okay, right now these are early voting, so I'm gonna confuse. Oh, what happened to our scanner, Linda?
What?
Someone took the scanner.
The barcode?
Yeah,
It's not working. Is it plugged in?
it's not here.
Okay, you're right.
No, that's the white one. You got the other one.
You have it? Who has it?
Oh,
See if anybody else comes.
Glenn.
I gotta go
Oh,
home and finish
thank
it
you.
with a minute.
I got it, Brian.
Thank you.
This one has to be.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you see it?
I can, but I don't know. It's
Yeah, he's kind of close.
close-ish.
Yeah, he's close.
The
Right.
A is, I don't know about the rest of it.
No?
What is
No,
this
still-
sample
Yeah, I
from?
reject it. Even when we said it.
This,
Yeah,
online.
okay.
They registered online,
Yeah,
and that's the only specimen signature we have.
I think so.
I think the first part, first name seems more close.
I
And
don't
the
think
as
it's
name
close
just didn't
enough.
finish.
What's my light not working?
Yep, that's the only.
I don't have the second name in the wall.
I guess I would reject that.
Yeah.
It's
And
still-
the angles,
that thing
by the
is
way, the
still
angle
working.
of the writing is different too.
I think he only
Reject,
signed
yeah.
Yeah.
Anthony.
Okay.
You can reject.
I got the.
No, Linda has it.
Reject.
Reject.
No.
That looks like me.
That looks like
I got rejected.
Keep it down.
I got one name.
that in
I
there.
don't got two names.
Reject.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no.
Reject.
No.
I think it's the same.
You thought it was the same?
And the T
Yeah.
Yeah,
at the end.
Yep.
Who did this?
yeah, but there's no,
They have to do it.
oh,
I think we're fine.
I,
The
no.
person's last is like Hamilton or something like that. There's nothing, there's no,
Even if you
nothing.
combine it, it doesn't have enough letters to give
No.
you a full name.
No, it's a reject.
All right, they think it's a reject.
Sorry, Linda.
I know, Glenn. Like, I'm not Flash over here. I gotta clear it out and put it in.
Okay. One flash.
Mhm.
Oh, that's not
Reject.
even the same person, really?
Reject.
It's
Gerardo?
Somebody else.
being rejected.
It does look like somebody else.
Here's a clip for early voting.
No, different squiggles, totally different squiggles.
Reject.
Fly.
There's no H squiggle.
Okay. Now I'm on election day. That's early voting.
Those were early voting group.
Yes.
No,
That's not bad.
no. I
And
don't
the
see
only
it.
one that says it's not bad,
Hmm?
again?
It looks nothing like it.
It's not that good.
No,
That's good.
No.
Reject.
that's a no.
This is the Gujarati one, right? Oh, yeah.
Is
No, there's no signature.
Okay.
We had to have it translated, but they didn't have a signature.
Okay, signature.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think. Oh, number one.
It is?
This is Gujarati,
Oh.
but, yeah, they signed it in their language.
Reject.
Yeah, I agree.
Another one.
Is it?
Yeah, but it's
What am I
on,
looking at?
this one's on the front, but they signed it in their language.
Oh.
Reject.
Reject.
You know, I'm looking up here and I see it's in English.
Oh, this is the one we could, that's one you and I have, right? That's the one?
Yeah.
No,
Reject.
I don't see
I
it.
don't see anything.
No.
Reject.
No, we couldn't go out, but yeah.
Sean, I don't think so.
No,
Reject.
Reject.
Did it say something that name of the person providing
Yeah.
signature? What is this?
someone provided assistance.
Assistance. Okay. Sorry. I didn't see.
Reject.
No,
Reject.
Okay.
no,
Reject.
Okay.
Reject.
Oh, my goodness. No. Oh, well,
Kind of blurry, right?
yeah, well.
Focus is not focusing.
Reject.
Reject?
There you go again.
yes, reject.
Is that me? No.
No,
Reject.
What if they make it easy to work?
No.
no,
Reject.
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 agreed.
Reject.
Oops.
Reject.
Reject.
Okay. Want me to go closer?
No, no, this, I'm trying to, actually try to repeat it
Yeah, yeah.
until it hurts.
Reject.
Okay.
Reject.
Agreed.
one is signatures missing.
Why is the clerk giving us provisional ballot envelopes that are primary envelopes?
Do I have to show them? Yeah, that goes in your file.
Gave Sylvia these certifications.
Reject.
Agreed.
Yes? No?
Reject.
I think it says P-O, I'm not sure away on there. Oh, attorney? No, I can't say, I can't.
No. Reject.
Oops. Oh, he's a student of mine. It was.
Reject.
I withdraw from
I
comment.
agree.
I mean, you can
Is there
read that
another,
one.
is there
you can't
another,
read
is there
yours.
another sample signature? By any chance?
A long time ago, maybe.
I know, let's see. I mean, it's sort of,
Right here. Nope,
I
and that's
already see it.
2020.
No, that's still a reject.
And this is 2020. No.
No,
Yeah.
no, that's confirmed. The J's are entirely different style. Oh, yeah, we got it. I've done some of that too.
Reject.
Agreed.
I don't think so.
Reject.
Reject.
That was always closed. Okay. Long time.
Reject.
No.
Reject.
Reject.
No. Reject. Reject.
That's it?
Yep, that's it.
So these are the last ballots to be counted, to be agreed to. So we could go, is somebody upstairs to run them through the counting machine?
Yes,
Does somebody have somebody who came back in from the SNS because they weren't there?
they came back.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So everything through, including today, will be up on the county clerk's website this evening?
Yes.
And so the only thing that potentially is left that would not be up there is when we Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, we have a court order, we're going to have a return date of a court order on Wednesday to take the emergency ballots, if there are any, out of the backs of these machines. And then, what are we doing with that? Are we going to be looking at that, or is there going to be, maybe we should,
Whatever the judge says. right?
yes, no, they need to take it out. No, the judge is not going to decide it. Perhaps before we look at any of that, we should talk about what we might want to accept, what we might not want to accept without seeing any of it, without seeing the particular ballots first. I see several categories. One, an envelope that has a ballot in it, but there's nothing on the envelope. No more, no name, no nothing. That would, in my view, that would be a definite reject.
Except I explained to you that there was a person who was given a ballot. I can't tell you it was emergency or provisional. He knows he was not told to sign his name to the outside.
I understand that, but the issue, the AG has been telling us that we shouldn't have used them at all, but even if we did use them, the reason they're telling us that is because we cannot identify whether the people who completed these ballots are validly entitled to vote at that location or at all. They may not be registered, they may have come into a different jurisdiction where they're not supposed to be, or any of the other reasons we wouldn't accept it. So we could not verify that they were entitled to get a ballot.
Sure, however, this had to have happened early in the day when the person at the
Yes.
polling place had no access to any of this site, was given instructions to that person not to vote. And I can't, in all conscience, reject it just because the name was not there on the outside.
We
That's just
can't,
saying.
what the
You
AG
can,
is,
I cannot. I'm telling you my position. I know for a fact that that happened. And why don't we see, the point being, if it was only one in all that entire thing, then you're going to reject every ballot, even though you know that they only received them because a co-worker said, here's an emergency ballot?
virtually every one of the emergency ballots that were issued because there were no paper provisional ballots in the
I
polling
certainly
place.
understand that.
So I understand that.
No
which is-
voter could have gone into the voting machine to take out an emergency ballot. They were given
No, I
an
understand
emergency
that.
ballot.
I understand that. But the Attorney General is telling us that we shouldn't have issued them because there is no way to identify whether the person, any way at all to identify whether the person is legitimately, would otherwise be legitimately entitled to vote. There can be no signature check, there can be no check as to whether they're a registered voter, no
All of
check as
which
to
I
whether they're other
understand.
jurisdiction, et cetera.
And
Again, that was kind of go over it. I mean, for the basis of meeting again, I would say you would just, again, I talked to the chairwoman and also the commissioner, that obviously you wouldn't be signing any paperwork today based on the
Right.
motion that would be
But what I'm
Wednesday.
trying to do is establish, before we see anything about the ballots, what town they're from, anything else, that we determine, so it's a totally nonpartisan basis, what the categories that we either want to accept or we consider reject, and what we want to consider accepting before we see anything and know where they came from. So it's not a partisan basis. That's what I'm trying to determine. In my view, we have three categories. One is they come out, there's nothing on the envelope, so there's nothing to identify.
I don't know who it is.
they
You don't
were
know who it
given
is.
that ballot by a poll worker.
I understand
Early in
that.
the morning,
I
and
fully-
I cannot believe that early in the morning, those persons going in, asking to vote, getting upset, being handed this ballot of people who are not registered, illegitimate in the town, or that voting place. Think about it.
We have a lot of people being, among other things, ballots that are being remade right now that came in, one just was a registered Cranberry voter, and they went into a Monroe polling place, and they're not allowed to vote the Monroe
When?
candidates.
Correct, he's correct.
When?
Right, they're not, When?
They're
Sometime
upstairs
either
now.
early
On
voting,
election day.
early voting or on election
Those are
day,
election day, they're working.
right?
No, I know that, but my comment is, these emergency ballots only went out in the morning, only. Nobody else, they were told immediately to stop doing that.
No, they weren't necessarily told immediately to stop doing that. We have 200 and some odd places, so they were told at different times. Let me give you the way I see the categories.
I got that. So
All right.
let's skip the first one that I disagree with. What do you
Okay,
recommend?
the second one is where they have their name and address, but no signature on the outside. And that's something we have to discuss, because that's potentially, at least we could check to see if they are a registered voter in a location, but we cannot confirm a signature because there's no signature. That's an iffy
And
one.
it's too late for a
Right.
cure letter.
And it's too late for a cure letter, anyway. The third one is ballot comes out and has the name and address and a signature on it, and we're able to check the signature against what we have on the record. To the extent that the signatures match, that, in my view, that would be a countable one.
Even
So
though
I
the
have one
ballot
that's,
itself is written on.
not the ballot, it's the envelope.
Just like you said ballot.
No, the envelope, the ballot envelope.
Can you say it again, sorry, name, address, and signature?
And we've checked that the signature matches with what we have on record, all right? I would suggest that that's a category that we can accept almost either automatically.
I would agree.
Right. And I would say the category where there's nothing at all there is a category that we should, Beatrice disagrees, that we should reject because we have nothing to confirm anything.
There's
The
still-
question,
Okay, go ahead.
the question is the middle category and whether we want, what we can do. I don't know. I mean, does anybody have any other thoughts about that category? I mean, we can't really compare it. I mean, there's a question of the situation.
We had another
Oh, yeah,
poll.
they were voting.
We polled them last meeting.
Did they vote the ballot?
Well, if we open it up Wednesday, right, and again, we don't know how many of these are even in the back of the
Correct.
machines. So if we have work to do, Sylvia's saying, I don't mind that, this should give them every benefit of the doubt. Instead that on Thursday, we're gonna, I mean, we're all guessing how many emergency ballots were used in 5 or 6
Anywhere.
towns.
Yes.
Okay, which we think are maybe 5 or 6 towns. We took the cue from the clerks.
Right.
We knew that at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, it was a mess. We
Absolutely.
don't know what the poll workers were doing then.
And we didn't tell them initially to have them sign it
Right,
at all.
we didn't.
We were doing this on the fly.
So I would be more inclined to research those names and addresses that weren't signed and to see if we could, I don't know what kind of verification we can do. I don't know. I mean, I'm inclined to
The
try
only
to.
thing you can do is a cure letter, and it's too late, isn't it?
Unless there's a way for us to
Unless you have a
contact.
poll number.
Again, we won't know till Wednesday when we actually physically open up and see what's happening.
Maybe this is all premature, I guess, the conversation.
Well, I'm trying,
Yeah. I know.
you know what I'm
I
trying to do?
I know.
I'm trying to say, let's decide, so it's not we
Right.
don't know where it came from, so it's not a partisan issue at all.
Keep in mind, number one, that Beatrice is in favor of accepting. That particular person cannot be put into the system. And the
Right,
voter
so-
history can't be updated.
Yeah.
We don't know who they are.
Did we,
Why
Did
don't
we-
we wait and see what...
on all
What's facing?
groups, or did we want to vote on, limit the issues to be the group where we have the name and address on the outside, but no signature? In other words, you disagree. One group, assuming the signature matches, we accept. You don't need to bring it back to us. And another group where there's nothing on the outside, which we reject, you don't need to bring it back to us again. And then the middle group is what we have to determine something.
I think I'm only comfortable with the last group that you mentioned, that the name, address, and signature is on that, on the envelope count. I think I would like to
Well, the AG is telling us we can't count.
We
That's
can't
what, that was on election day,
Right.
that we couldn't count
Any emergency ballot.
any emergency ballots, but the reason, their opinion is, the reason for their opinion is that there was no way to identify the voter, the person that cast that ballot, as to whether they were legitimately entitled to vote. And that clearly applies to envelopes where there's no identification as to the voter. The other two categories, there is some identification of the voter, so I'm comfortable in figuring out some way potentially to extend, not disenfranchise them when we have enough that we can, at least with the signature on it, to identify them as a legitimate voter and possibly there. So, and the middle one is what we have. I would be happy to talk about it and decide that now, but if we're not comfortable in terms of that, that's fine. But
Well, I think we should wait and see what we're facing.
on everything,
Yeah. We may be worrying about something that's not there. Very possible.
well, if I don't have a
The
second,
ballots may be signed, and then they're
Well-
all ballots.
are we comfortable saying now? I'm trying to limit what we have to discuss and limit an argument, all right? Are we comfortable in saying that the ballots, that whatever, this is all theoretical, we don't know how many there are, if there are any, et cetera. Are we comfortable in saying that the ballots where the envelope, it has the name and address of the voter and the signature of the voter, and staff checks that the signature is consistent, or we confirm it's consistent
Yes,
if we
we
have to bring
already
it back?
said we were comfortable with
Well,
that.
right, I just,
Yeah. You can make that, I
do
think
you
you can
agree
make
with
that,
that?
you can make that motion right now.
Okay,
For that, just
for that section, for
That
that
category,
group,
yeah.
okay.
So we are going to count emergency ballots. What did the AG tell us?
The AG said we shouldn't count emergency ballots because we could not identify, using the proper form, which is the emergency ballot envelope, which I understand is totally blank, so there's no voter identified on that. We could not count them because we could not identify whether the person was a legitimate voter and entitled to vote. Because the emergency
I'm not
ballots,
going to vote for just a category. I will negate it unless we're saying we are going to count emergency ballots or we're not. So three of you can make a decision on the odd man out anyway. I think it's an unusual circumstance. And I don't see people coming in and arbitrarily saying, and nobody knowing them,
we have hundreds,
I get it.
Linda, hundreds maybe?
I'm just giving you my example why I'm not going to.
Couple
We
hundred.
have people that went to a location where they did not live and voted a ballot. Is that what you're asking me?
Yes,
Yes.
we have those,
And
and
we're
those,
remaking them.
and we're remaking them as to the offices that are common to both locations. So we have perhaps several hundred ballots upstairs now where the voter voted in a place where they were not entitled to vote, and they voted for offices for which they were not entitled to vote. And we know it, and we're...
And why did they do that?
Because they went into the wrong place.
And the poll worker let them do it?
Yes.
And they were able to be checked and they're all legitimate?
And
So
we're
the
only-
wrong vote was
and
done with a poll worker there, but this other poor person who comes in as
Because
handed
it
the
was
ballot
the, it
is
was,
not going to be
it
counted.
was the
We're
voters.
redoing an entire set of ballots for people that were not
Can I
turned
just
away.
add,
No.
we're just, like you said, we're just doing the common offices, so
It
we've
was the
researched
voter,
it.
the voter
I'm
made a
sorry,
mistake.
what?
The voter should have,
We've researched it, and we know where the voters should have voted, and we're just giving them those offices that are common to them, where they should have voted.
right,
They're not entitled to.
I get what you're saying, I'm just trying to
Because we
put...
know who they are, we know we can prove
right.
who
We
they
know
are.
who they
Picture in my
are,
head.
and we can't say that the people that have, that the ballots are, the ballot envelopes, any emergency ballot envelopes which are blank, we can't say whether they're,
We have no
Entitled
idea,
to vote.
Sylvia pointed out, what could be inside, correct? So all I'm saying is, I'm
It's a-
telling you now.
But what's
either
inside, there's
accept
nothing
them
to
or
be,
not.
there's
I
nothing,
don't understand why you need to have a vote on the portion that you've decided would be acceptable, and that, even though you have the agreement. So let's just see when we get them. Or vote, and I told you I'm gonna vote.
What do you think, Dan?
After what we've gone through, I would definitely be inclined to accept the ballot that had their name, address, and signature, whether it was today, tomorrow, or Thursday, or Friday. So that I know in my mind I would accept. The other two, I don't have a clear picture in my head right now. So if you're looking for a motion for today, that's the only one that I'm saying straw poll.
Okay.
That's the only one I would vote yes for.
well, then let's get that done, all right? In connection with any emergency ballots that are removed from the machine, proper chain of custody, which is our people, so that shouldn't be an issue, where the ballots have the name, address, and signature of the voter, and we check the signature of the voter and it's consistent with what we have on record, that we count them, and we don't need to come back to us on that part. That's my motion.
I'd second that.
Roll call, Maria?
Attorney
Yes.
Abel? Commissioner Franklin?
Yes.
Commissioner Cap?
Yes.
Commissioner Moskowitz?
No, for the reasons explained earlier.
You realize you're second, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Yes, I
Passed.
do, know
Okay.
exactly what.
Okay. Okay, I'm not gonna make a different motion because we're not gonna get a majority, so
Same
just
thing.
leave it.
Let's wait and see what we get,
Okay,
all right? Can we move on now
I'm
to
just
public
trying to avoid it.
Commissioner comments? Any commissioner comments?
Oh, thank you.
We may have an administrator, I'm sorry, we might have administrator comments.
yeah, we also need, we're gonna have to know about, like, we're gonna have to have another meeting to do something, potential.
Right.
Unless we now take all these things out, and there's actually nothing, there's no emergency ballots in any of the first 50 or whatever machines there
Wishful
are.
thinking.
You know, which could be the case because most of them are in the provisional ballots.
Right, could be.
So again, in terms of certifying the election and so forth, we kind of outlined to the commissioners that you can set a date for, and again, in terms of this meeting, instead of just adjourning, you can take a recess and come back on Friday at a certain point and revisit if there are emergency ballots in different categories that you outlined. You can come back and then review them at that particular time. At that time, also, the election audit, which all the 21 counties are seeking an extension on because of the issue with the secure letters and the quarantine machines, Middlesex County would be done on the 19th. So by the time you would meet at that time, the audit would have been completed. We would have had the different categories, if there are any, emergency ballots, and be able to present them to you at a meeting.
But is there any action, I'm not disagreeing, but is there any action we have to take as a board in connection with the audit?
No.
No, it's just that that's the audit.
No,
Because
so
the audit, is the audit typically, all these things are slapdash, they don't match up. Was the intention that the audit be conducted before the ballots get certified? Was that the general intention? That's not obviously.
That was the general intention of when it was signed, but again, since then, they've done the.
I know,
legislation
we did all the
for
rest of it,
letters
yeah.
And the extension for the quarantine machines. So that's why the Attorney General of 20 counties is seeking the extension, because it's physically impossible to do the audit by today.
Let's just, I got it. If we, will it change? Will it change? I mean, I'm happy to do this on Friday if we finish the audit, et cetera. But whether the audit shows that everything was perfect, or the audit shows that there was some defective count in some way, that doesn't change what the ballots that we're going to certify, right? Because we're not, doesn't, or does it?
I mean, really, it just confirms that the voting machines, or the tabulators upstairs counted the ballots as
Right.
they were.
But if we have a hand count and there's a variance, that doesn't change does that change the total, does that going to change the total votes that what's going to be certified?
No,
It doesn't, so it doesn't
For the
anyway.
purposes of
Yeah, so it doesn't
certified
anyway.
elections, yeah.
I'm,
In other words, the audit does not affect the by the count?
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, if there was a situation where it was completely not consistent with.
Right, then we'd probably get a court order to do
We would
something
have to
again.
get a court order, and then it would be the basis then for a contested election. Total post.
Because that meant we didn't check anything all the way through.
Okay.
Obviously, we've been very much aware of it in each
Yeah.
step, right?
So, I mean, I'll leave it to you. I mean, if you want to do, and again, instead of adjourning, kind of take a break and come back on, if you want to come back on Thursday,
I
so
don't-
you can revisit those
Thursday.
emergency ballots per se, or if you want to come back on Friday and kind of have everything in front of you in terms of the audit, the emergency ballots, you know, at this point, all the ballots have been tabulated to date. And again, on Friday, it would just be the machine ballot cards, which in terms of an audit are pretty straightforward. I mean, it's on the card. The mail-in ballots and provisionals are the ones where you kind of get into, you know, people seeing what's on the piece of paper and trying to determine, you know, voter intent, which again, it's not.
If necessary, I could meet either day.
Either day is okay for me.
I would give us the benefit of the doubt,
Make till Friday.
make the Friday, I mean, give the staff a little bit of break
So
here and say.
if you want to do maybe like 4 o'clock on Friday?
No,
Yeah.
earlier perhaps?
That's fine.
Seriously.
I'm the only one who has, well,
I'm just, that's why I'm asking, that's why we're aiming.
Friday's okay, you want to do it earlier, that's fine.
So, yeah,
Because we'll start at 8 o'clock for the ballot cards.
Yeah, I think I can work it out.
thank you.
Hopefully it'll be done by the
2.
early.
I don't know what, I don't care. I mean, I could do 4 too, but it doesn't, whatever.
Is 3 okay for you?
Oh, at Friday, anytime.
She's got,
I want people
it's a
to,
complication, right? So, want
Let's
to?
do another. If 2 could work,
let's just make, I want to accommodate,
I just,
We always try to accommodate the
Whoever
commissioners, so
can,
if you want 2 o'clock,
yeah,
then
and Thursday.
just because, you know, I could get fired from my job,
When
but that's
April be
okay.
back?
No problem.
And you're fine at 2?
Don? Will
What?
April be back?
April will be back.
So we have a quorum.
You'll have.
Oh, well, no, she'll
Could
be
you do
here,
that?
she'll be here, I mean, I've been talking to her, I mean, 2 o'clock you want, on Friday?
If you can.
Okay,
What
I'll
time?
try to accommodate you.
If you can, too.
What time? 2?
Friday.
So I make a motion to recess this meeting,
Well, we got public
To
comment.
2:30.
yeah, but can I make a, what, you want me to wait or you want to make the motion
Yeah,
now?
let's wait and adjourn.
No, we're not going to adjourn. we're
No, I
gonna-
mean recess.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are commissioners,
Okay.
any more comment? No?
Okay.
Public.
Good evening, Charles Cradaville, New Brunswick today. Just want to clarify what I just heard. The board will not be certifying the election today, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I have a copy of the order from Judge McCloskey regarding retrieving emergency ballots. It was alluded to that there were emergency ballots that were put in provisional envelopes and those were counted if the voter was entitled to vote. Any idea how many?
No. Not until we open the machine.
No, I mean, how many were in the provisional envelopes and counted?
We don't have.
We don't have totals. I mean, it wasn't a lot. I mean, for Old Bridge itself, is that's when we kind of did about like 55.
Plainsboro has a
So we
lot.
had to rename
Plainsboro has a lot,
Plainsboro.
yeah. It's an opportunity.
Okay. And those ballots were not supposed to be given out according to the Attorney General. Is that what I heard from Commissioner Katz?
Based on the Attorney General's opinion, was based on the fact that they could not be identified, the person that cast the ballot could not be identified. So we couldn't identify whether they were entitled to, whether they were a voter that was entitled to vote, or whether they were not a voter, whether they were in the wrong place, etc., right? The ones that were put in provisional ballot envelopes, the flaps were completed so we could fully identify the voter. So it was using an emergency ballot and putting in the provisional ballot envelope, in my opinion, is the functional equivalent of putting a paper provisional ballot in the provisional ballot envelope.
Right, and so that was a workaround because the paper provisionals were not available at any
Correct.
polling locations.
Correct, and we
at the
decided
beginning.
that at the,
At the beginning.
yes.
And the AG's was comfortable with the explanation that it would be put in
Yeah.
a provisional certificate.
Right. And then there's an unknown number that may not have been put in the provisional and may have been put in the back of the machines. And I believe the order calls for Wednesday for 2 commissioners at least to be there.
To open the backs of the machines and take out any provisional ballots that have been cast, so we can
Placed
do
there.
something. That would,
Emergency ballots.
emergency, I'm sorry, emergency ballots that were cast.
On specific machines. I'm
Yes.
presuming those are the machines where you understand that the poll workers gave out emergency ballots, right?
This is what my
This
understanding
is
is,
what
the county, the municipal clerks tell
have told
us
us.
Right. So,
that it was
okay.
potential.
And so that's on for Wednesday at noon. Can I attend?
I think that's the court, to get the court order to allow it. That's the return, sometime on
There's a,
that day.
there's a 9 a.m. hearing, but then I see 12 noon.
You have the order
I
show
do,
close?
yeah. Middlesex County Board of Elections open on November 17, 2021 at 12 noon, the voting machines used in the November general election. So I guess unless something changes at the hearing, this would occur at noon on Wednesday, and I'd like to know if I can attend.
It's at the college. No, it would be at our warehouse.
The
because that's
warehouse.
where the machines
At the
would be.
warehouse, I assume, right?
I don't have an objection to having the president of the machines.
Just let us talk to council and then we'll get back to it.
Okay.
We don't, this is something new.
Who's gonna call?
Who's going to-
And you'll let her know?
Okay.
We'll let our administrator get back.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll look forward to that. And all the ballots that were rejected today for signature mismatches, were those folks sent cure letters or no?
Yes, they reached out to them. Oh, can I answer? I'm sorry. Yes, they reached out to the voters
And nothing came
by
back?
email, phone
Or they
call.
may, yes, or they, if they came back, they're cured. The ones that we rejected, and if it didn't come back, they're not going to be counted, because we did reject them.
Okay. I want to just reiterate the concerns I've raised about this election. There's a really important discussion that has to happen. The county clerk needs to be a part of that discussion. ES&S needs to be a part of that discussion, and I'm begging the board to schedule that discussion immediately and invite those parties so that we can have that discussion, because we can't have this happen again. I know that there were the problems that have been discussed at this board, but there's a slew of other problems that have been reported in the press, and,
Your time is up, you're extended for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to ask, in that case, about an article in Tap Into Piscataway, November 2nd, problems at the polls, technical failures caused chaos on Election Day in Piscataway. Refers to, quote, reports of incorrect public questions displaying at some voting locations. The County Board of Elections was notified and later updated the machines. Is that true?
Could you repeat that?
Incorrect public questions displaying at some voting locations in Piscataway.
That was the explanation statement for the ballot question, local public question number 2 on the voting machines in early voting and for Piscataway.
So there was incorrect interpretive statement being displayed, is what I'm hearing. Is that right?
Correct, on the machines, and then the corrective action was to post both ballot questions for the local public questions as well as the state questions on the gray panel above the voting machines for the voters to see.
And how did that error happen? Who's responsible for that?
That would be in terms of the creation of the file for the election would be the provision of the county clerk.
So another screw up from the county clerk, who's not here, hasn't been here since January, I believe, right? She attended in January and has been absent since then. I mean, this is just unacceptable. I'm at a loss. The last county clerk never would let this get this far without showing up and explaining how the mistake happened and how they're going to prevent it from happening again. Madam Chair, will you request the county clerk attend your next regular meeting?
We'll propose it to you.
Okay. I would suggest that it be proposed in the most forceful way possible, because, you know, sometimes when you make an ask in a way that's kind of, you know, like, if you have time, you could come by, it doesn't happen. But if you demand her to show up, this is her responsibility.
We have that authority
This is her job.
to ban her.
I think you do have the authority to say, we need you to be here, and to answer these questions, because it's just unacceptable. You know, we see the impacts it has. It makes all your jobs harder. It makes my job harder. It makes the candidates' jobs harder. Everybody's at a loss, and she is nowhere to be found. And so I'm really disappointed with that, and I hope that this board will do what they can to get her to explain.
There's a series, in my opinion, there's a series of things that we need answers for that relate to this election and what happened and what didn't happen. I intend to have some of this stuff on the agenda, and some of it does relate to functions that the county clerk does that we don't do. That's as much as I can say in determining where we'll have to, past that point I can't say it.
I just want to end with one thing. The notice for the public meetings says that your regular meetings are at 11 Kennedy Boulevard. You know, we just ask again that please somebody notify me of the correct date and time and location for your next meeting, so that there's no confusion, and that I can be there and witness and record and ask my questions too. So I hope that that can happen. Thank you.
I believe it's here, the next meeting on Friday, right?
Well, that's but I mean the next regular meeting,
Oh,
your
it's
annual
December
notice
2nd.
says
Okay.
all the meetings are at Kennedy Boulevard, and I don't know if that's been corrected, but it should be. Thank you.
Meeting, a motion to recess our meeting?
Motion to recess until Friday, the 19th at 2 p.m.
Here.
To
in
PM.
Middlesex County.
Second, okay.
You Sylvia, Sylvia, just say yes.
Yes. Commissioner Franklin?
Yes.
Commissioner Cap?
Yes.
Commissioner Moskowitz?
Yes. Motion to adjourn.
No, we just.
Oh, motion to recess, okay.
We're done.